All right, we're going to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. Present are council members Frazier, Cost, Bub, Marmee, and sitting in for Blake will be Hall. First item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $1,950. This is actually from, is this from police or fire? Frederick Cohegan.
Mr. Chairman, I'll offer a motion. He's retired.
Okay, motion by Bub. Second. Second by Frazier. These are just payouts for somebody who's resigned. So this individual resigned April the 2nd. So I've got a motion on the floor and a second. Any questions and or comments?
I'm sorry, I got tied up on a phone call up there. That's one of our maintenance guys that's retiring.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Council member Blake is now here, so I will recognize that he is now part of the agenda. And next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $8,000.
Yes, this is for another employee that's taking retirement. It's just an employee payout.
Motion.
Second.
A motion by Bub, second by Cost. Any questions and or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $40,500 for security.
Mr. Chairman, this is for health insurance and PRS for the folks that are manning the magnetometer and the X-ray machine. And the money is coming out of one of the court funds.
Second.
I have a motion by Cost, second by Frazier. Any questions and or comments?
Question.
Frazier.
You like how the setup is working currently? And
I think so far so good.
okay.
The folks that man that give us reports on contraband and items that people have tried to get in. Also, they've noticed a number of people that have turned around, gone back to their cars, and then come in. So, seems to be doing what we have wanted to have done for many, many years, and I think it does provide a modicum of security for the people that work in the building.
Good.
Good. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Chairman, I'd just like to comment too, the court's done a great job of hiring two young men that really do an outstanding job. They've worked well with the citizens down here, and they helped them out in every which way, and I've got a lot of compliments on them, so thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good to hear. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $75,000. Always have the largest amount, Roger.
Well, I got the biggest problems too. So. Well, maybe not. But, this is just for the final payment of the North Fork interceptor, our North Fork emergency repair we had a few months ago. If you remember, we were here trying to do an emergency repair. That total repair came in at just over $200,000. We still have some work to do up there. We're working with Army Corps to do some bank reinforcement up there, but that's going to be something that we can bid out and get pricing and go through the normal procedures. Eventually, once the design is done, the design's not done with that, but I think we've put our finger in the hole of the dam for a little while, so we're okay up there. So,
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Frazier, second by Bub. Well, I can tell you this, Roger, even after Saturday night, the river shifted again. It's taken about a lot more bank back behind where I reside and where it was actually up over the top in some of the gravel pits up there, the old gravel pits.
Yeah,
It's just,
we were
that
inspecting
river's
it
just
this
going
morning.
crazy anymore.
Yeah, it's crazy how much that's moved this past year. So.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Bub?
Is the road that you put in, is that just going to stay there? You don't have to get that through that
Yeah, we're gonna
landowner's yard? That's just going to stay there?
We're going to keep that there at a minimum until we get done with the bank restoration, which is probably going to be over a year project trying to get that done. So, and the property owner there just wants it to stay anyway.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
which will be good for us in the future. We can inspect that a little bit easier then too, to access that if we do have another problem. So,
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation amount of $850,000.
I think Autumn sent out a new fund number for this one. Did she get that to you? It should be a 665 number now.
No, she did not.
We have 5238.
What is that fund number?
Well, I believe Jackie wants that changed to 665-760 5522.
Final answer?
That's my final answer, I believe. So that's what I was told at 4:30. So I thought she was going to get that to Autumn.
I put it on the main sheet that Autumn types the minutes, so we'll have that changed.
So this is just money for the bond, or appropriated money so we can spend the money from the bond for the Horns Hill assessment project. We're putting it all in one fund. We're going to pay out the fees, and then we'll divide up how that ever gets divided out at the end of the project once we know all the costs are done. And so some of this is going to be paid by stormwater, and some by there's some road work that gets done, and then the citizens are going to pay as well on the assessment. So it'll all be a different bond when we get done, but this is just how we're going to pay for it while the construction is going on. So,
Gotcha.
Mr. Chairman, I will abstain on this one.
Okay. Any questions on this?
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion by Frazier, second by Cost. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. And I have one abstention. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation amount of $500.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is dollars we'd like to appropriate from the unappropriated balance. It was a donation from the Bill and Sue Moore Fund from the Licking County Foundation for flowers in front of the City Hall.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Frazier, second by Bub. Questions and or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, this Finance Committee meeting stands adjourned. Next up is service.
All right, we'll call the Service Committee meeting to order. Those present are myself, Rath, Cost, Blake, Bub, and Lang. We're going to have because of a conflicting meeting time with one of our presenters, we're going to juggle the schedule a little bit. Mr. Ebel has agreed to go second for the Health Department. But first, we'll discuss changes to the South Corporation line with the city of Heath. Mr. Moorhead,
Yeah, I'll just start out here quick and then yield over to Tim Kelly. We approached you several months ago about cooperating with the city of Heath and trying to correct some of the abnormalities with the corp line, major issues that the corp line for years and years has cut across private properties. And so you may own a property that's part in Newark, part in Heath, and this is a project that Tim's kind of undertaken, and Lindsay as well, to try to clear up those that corp line and make it run along property lines as opposed to cutting midway through several properties along the southern border of Newark and Heath. So I'll turn it over to Tim to talk just a little bit more about that.
Okay. Thanks for juggling the schedule. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Again, I'm Tim Kelly. I've worked in engineering for over 25 years. I'm on Heath City Council, been on there for over 19 years. And part of the thing I always wanted to do was to get this corp line changed, because most people don't know it's a line starting at the Circle Mounds, and it goes over 2 miles long and hits on the east side of South 2nd Street. So if you can imagine a straight line over 2 miles long, and that does not follow property lines, street lines, anything you normally would think of a normal boundary. So in some cases, it goes right through people's houses, it goes through people's sheds, it goes, so, and I've always wanted to change that, because we have problems sometimes with people, like a building permit. Actually, if you wanted to put a shed in your backyard of some of these properties, you should go to Heath to get a building permit instead of Newark, but no one ever does it because their address is Newark, they just go to Newark, and so but I want to get that changed so that in the future, if your house is in Newark, everything, your property's all in Newark. If it's in Heath, you're all in Heath. And this change of the line does not change anyone, where they vote or where they go to school or anything like that. It doesn't change school boundaries at all. All it's doing is trying to make it so it follows the backs of properties or long property lines. And the only time it actually goes down streets or something like that is like Morgan Avenue. Right now it's down the center of Morgan. That would stay the same. When you get to, as you can see, it's a long map. When you get over to like Blue Jay Road and stuff like that, we go along the edge of Blue Jay Road up until it goes back up to 2nd Street and around properties and stuff. There's another map that goes up. So actually, once you hit 2nd Street, it used to follow the Quarry Run up there until it hit like across the South Fork of the Licking River and like the Park District and stuff is off of High Street and stuff. So all that ground and everything would be changed so that most of it's in Newark, all of it would be in Newark after this is done, but most of it's Heath, all of it would be Heath after the fact and stuff. And tonight I just wanted you guys to kind of see it, see how you feel about it, if you have any problems. What we'd like to do next, if everyone's kind of on board with it, is finalize the legal description of this new corp line and then put it in ordinance form, so that then it can come back to your council, go to Heath Council, then they can run it through proper committees and everything else and have public hearings, see if any property owner has a problem, switching. Now, this is a stack, there's over 100 properties that's along there that's affected some way or another, okay? And what I did is I print out everyone's tax, where they distribute their taxes to, and just to see, okay, if they're paying a little tax money to Heath now, but when it's done, it'll go to Newark, or if they're paying a little tax money to Newark and it'll go to Heath, how will that change? So I did a spreadsheet of the 100-some properties, and depending on how one property is kind of in question, it's either Heath will have $101 more, or it'll have $153 less. It just all depends. So, when it's all said and done, the taxes and stuff that you get for like police and fire, there's, wee little amounts. School taxes stay the same, the county taxes all stay the same, but the on your tax duplicate, like in Newark, you have the, for 1970 current expenses, permanent improvement, bond, wait, that was reading the wrong one, sorry. Fireman's fund, general fund, and police pension is the thing. So, on most of these properties, it's just a few dollars each way that it would change and everything. So, that's where it stands now. Like I said, if you want to look at these maps, and we can send out stuff to you, but the yellow line is the current kind of straight line, and the red line is kind of how we want to make it go in the future. And, yeah, and then Quarry Run. So the total change is about 3 miles and stuff, because we're going to go about a mile up Quarry Run and that way and stuff. That's all said and done.
Good.
Anybody have any questions?
So each of the property owners is going to have an opportunity to have input.
Yes, I would.
Whose properties will be affected?
Right. What I think we should do is have public hearings, whether we have one in Heath and one in Newark or something like that, where we would have. We've got this broken down, the long map broken down into 11 by 17 maps. And what I hope to do when we finalize the actual line is actually print these out, big boards, so we have all 11 of them like around, so people can see the properties really, nice and easy, and look and see, okay, there's my shed, and the line right now goes through it. When it's done, my whole property will be, in whatever city it's going to be. And then if anyone has any problems or concerns, or I don't want to do this or I don't want to do that, then we could change, and say, okay, it's no real big fight to take them back out and leave it the way it is in that one area. But maybe we can get quite a bit of it, to be changed to property lines and stuff.
What about a property that's partially in Newark, partially in Heath? You decide that property is going to go all to Heath, and the property owner says, no, I don't want to go all to Heath, I want to go all to Newark. Or vice versa.
So what it would be is if they're currently, whatever city they're currently in, if they didn't want to switch, they would stay with that property. But we're not changing anyone's where they vote or anything like that. So if your property is predominantly in Newark and you vote Newark now, you would continue to do that. The only thing we'd be doing is maybe your back property that's in Heath would be, go to Newark. Okay. But if they want that back property to still stay in Heath, I'd have no problem with just jogging around it. But now, because it'd just be the way it is now, part in Newark, part in Heath. It wouldn't change anything.
So the fact that you're on Heath City Council, probably not the time to joke about moving that line further south and annexing all of Heath.
Well, as an April Fool's joke, I was going to draw the line the other way around and take it all north.
All right. Any questions from any of the committee members?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Wang.
So is there a plan then to notify all the property owners along that border whose property would be?
Yeah.
When is it? Like, what's the timeline for that?
Again, once we finalize the line, exactly, we've got a few areas where to write the legal description and stuff like that is kind of complicated a little bit. So as soon as we get the legal description written, the map drawn exactly the way the legal description reads, so they both match, and then we would put it in an ordinance form for both councils that way, and then come for the first reading, and then after that you'd probably set a public hearing, and at that time we would notify everybody of when the public hearing is, and that would be their, it'd probably be in the paper and all that kind of stuff too, but I mean, we'd more or less probably send out a letter, just like you do a zoning change or annexation change like that. So essentially, people within so many feet would be notified. At least all the properties that would be affected would definitely be. Whether some of the people that's kind of close, whether they would or not, I don't know, because it really doesn't affect them in any way. So, and the law director could probably talk to this and stuff, but there is a Ohio Revised Code formula for doing this, where two adjoining municipal corporations by ordinance can change that line as long as less than 5 people are affected, and we're hopefully affecting none as far as where they vote and stuff. So that's
only if they're affected by where they vote.
Yeah, if you have more than 5 affected. Like if we were trying to go, like you said, further and take a whole bunch of people's houses and switch them one way or the other, and let's say there's 10 houses and all 10 people that live in those houses all vote in one, and you try to move them the other, you couldn't do it this way. You'd have to go a different form to do that. You'd have to de-annex, annex, and all that kind of stuff. It's a whole different process. But this, as long as we don't affect where people vote by more than 5 of those people.
So I'm confused on the taxes part then. If I have a house that's in Newark, part of my property is at Heath, I vote in Newark, am I paying income tax to Newark and Heath?
No, you're paying your income tax to where you live or where you work. okay?
Okay, so you said it would affect taxes in certain ways. How's it?
Oh, the taxes, is the property taxes?
So the property taxes are county, I guess, instead of school district.
Right, but yeah, on your property tax duplicate, if you ever do it like at how it's broken down, the distribution of it, both Newark and, you have Newark and Heath both have a few where they get some money for the general fund and for police and fire, and Heath has it for their fire levies and stuff like that. So that's a little bit, that's where the money comes in a little different, because there's a lot of vacant property. Most of the property that's in Heath now that we are thinking about taking to Newark, they have small little tax duplicates, okay, because it's like vacant ground, and they pay a little bit, but it goes to Heath right now, okay? That money would go to Newark if we put it in Newark. That money would go to Newark, okay? And there's a few places, one like Manicore, okay? The front part of Manicore is empty lots and stuff. That property, right now we have it going to Heath, and so that little bit of Heath, or Newark taxes would come to Heath. That's where I said there's a little bit of give and take as you go. But like Manicore where the building is actually in Heath, and all their big property taxes go to Heath now anyway, okay? So we're not, that's why I printed all these out. There's none of them that are switching big, you know, to the other.
Any other questions from committee?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kelly, I appreciate you doing this because I know Matt Gayhart lives on Franklin Avenue, and we've had some discussions with his situation where his neighbor, you know, the house is in Heath, but then the corporate line goes down the guy's driveway, and so he has a little sliver that bumps up to his property that's in Newark. And so his issue was, well, whose property maintenance code do we get on this guy to maintain that property? So at least with cleaning up the corporate line, we'll distinguish true responsibility of who's on what. If it's going to be City of Heath property maintenance or if it's going to be Newark's property maintenance getting done, because I know that was confusing. So I appreciate you presenting this tonight, so thank you.
Yeah, that was one of the big reasons to do it also, is to do it. Because like I said, like on Ridgefield, there's, you know, a lot of houses on Ridgefield that every one of their back properties has pretty much a shed or something, and all those would actually be in Heath, but Newark takes care of the property maintenance or like that. But, you know, theoretically, if one of those burned down or something happened, it would actually be a Heath, you know, call. But it does, you know, in actuality, Newark goes and does the stuff. So we just want to clean it up so that, you know, if it looks like it's in Newark, it's in Newark. If it looks like it's in Heath, it's in Heath.
So currently, with a piece of property with a line drawn down the middle, is there an agreement between Newark and Heath as to who's responsible for property maintenance now on each of those properties? No. You just kind of look at it and say, you take it or I'll take it.
Yeah. Okay. But that's what's happened, because some of the property owners are playing both ends against the middle. They read the code one way for what makes it best for them this city, and then the best that way, and they try to, you know.
Any questions from any? Oh, I'm sorry.
One quick follow-up. Yeah. Are there any other parts of our border that are like this, where it splits across property lines? I'm just curious if there's any future thoughts of other cleanup projects like this.
Well, I know we did this about a year or so ago on the west side, the western border.
Yeah, I don't know.
Down Thornwood.
I think most of the others follows like the railroad tracks or figured property and stuff like that. It not split where people own both sides and we're right down through the middle or through a portion and stuff and everything. And this is the main one, you know, that it's really been that way and stuff.
Well, thank you for undertaking the project.
Any other questions? Anybody else?
So this isn't changing anyone's mailing address?
No. No. Your mailing address stays the same, your where you vote stays the same, where you go to school stays the same. Everything, the way we've tried to do this, we don't change any of that.
So what would be the possible objection?
I don't know. I don't see any reason to do it. Now, like I said, there's a couple places.
Somebody planning on building a shed that Heath allows and Newark doesn't.
You know.
Or something along those lines.
I mean, if you want to get really crazy about it, I mean, I hate to bring this up, but they joked about since April Fool's, I'll do it, you know, the chicken deal. I mean, if Heath had a thing where you could have chickens and Newark would pass a thing where you can or vice versa, and part of that property is still in Heath, they could have, you know, whatever the zoning allows.
For April Fools. Because
you know. just something to think, So that's the reason to clear it up, is so the zoning code would match the city that they're actually in.
Okay. All right, any questions from the audience? Anywhere in the audience at all? Mr. Frazier?
Mark Frazier, 20 West North Street, Newark, Ohio. When it comes to the earthworks, so what is the benefit of us changing that border to give all the earthworks to Heath when there is no tax benefit? This is an open field. Would we be open to keeping that border where it is?
There's really no benefit one way or the other than just we were just kind of being consistent, keeping all the property as one. There's keeping the border there. I mean, there is a iron pin out here, and there's supposed to be one over here that line goes through. So legally describing it, we could start here and go and not change that part. We're just trying to clean up the...
Yeah, that's my biggest reservation is with all this UNESCO stuff and us having a partial interest in it.
Yeah.
I think it's the best for both communities. And then the other piece is on the eastern border with all the zigzag lines to somewhat straight zigzag lines. Is that all mainly foundation, like Licking County Parks land, Licking County Foundation land, and we're just going along the border? Is that what that is?
Yes. When you go north, the Licking, that's the river right there.
Yep.
And currently, the Corp line is the center of the river, but Licking Park owns both sides. Licking Park owns both sides.
So
State of Ohio owns.
So there's really no tax impact.
There's
it's
no
just a legal
taxes at all.
description. It's just
no
a legal
taxes
description.
gained or lost at all on that stretch. The properties through here, it's just the person owns on both sides of the run, and so we're just making it so.
Yeah, they don't have partial
Yeah,
taxes.
so it's like, that side is Heath, that side is Newark, and vice versa and stuff. So that they're again, so the zoning code could all be the same.
And this partial bite in the middle, where you're taking our land from us, is that the right in the middle? This one, right here.
Oh, right there. Yeah, that's the Manicore.
Is that Manicore? Is that what that is? Because
Yeah, that right here.
Yeah.
That's Manicore. Manicore's right here, and that's they own like 4 lots up front here, and that's like their entrance to get in, and they own a lot here.
And so their building currently is in Heath?
Buildings in Heath.
Okay.
Yeah. They currently pay the vast majority of their real estate taxes and all that kind of stuff goes to Heath.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience?
You were just talking about the Newark earthworks?
Yeah.
Right? That's going to change to Heath now?
The way I have it drawn right now, yes. But like I just mentioned, if you didn't want that to change, we wouldn't have to change it. We could start, on the east side of it on 79. Start at 79 and go. The only reason we did it was because originally we were trying to balance out land, the amount of land we took one way or the other and stuff. And it's like most of the stuff was going to Newark, and so it was kind of like that was a big chunk of ground that we could take the other way to try to balance. We were trying to, if we were taking X number of acres from Heath to put in Newark, we would take about that same amount of acres out of Newark into Heath, so it kind of was equal. But that really doesn't matter. And again, the taxes kind of worked out about equal. So, but yeah, there's no taxes on that one way or the other, so it wouldn't. So if that was a stumbling block, or if that was was going to mess up doing it, we'd start at 79 and go east from there.
Rochelle Volan-Smith, 237 Violet Court. I was wondering, in terms of the Circle Mound area, that was supposed to be getting some funding, I think, for historical preservation and that sort of thing. How does it affect both areas? I mean, because it seems like it's quite an asset.
To that question, right now at this time, I don't.
Or is it, or does that just go to parks?
I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question right now.
Okay, thank you.
But a good question, something to consider something to take into consideration when making decisions on this.
Thank you.
So any other questions from anyone? All right, not seeing any other questions. Is there anything you need from us at this point in time, or is this, or just informational? You gave us the information.
Yeah, it's just informational.
Just informational.
We'll move forward
Yeah.
and draw up the legal descriptions and the piece of legislation and start the process.
See you back in a couple
This has
months.
already been, Tim's already discussed this with Heath Council and kind of got their preliminary head nod to move forward on that, so.
Okay. So when you go to city council tonight, make sure you voice my suggestion. All right, thank you. Appreciate you coming in, doing all the work, giving us all the information ahead of time. We appreciate you keeping us informed during the process. That's a big help. So while they're rolling up the maps, we'll have Joe Ebel come up. And Joe is going to discuss with us the annual report for the Licking County Health Department.
Hello, everyone. As Mr. Rath said, I'm Joe Ebel with the Licking County Health Department. Just kind of doing a follow-up. We sent out our annual report. Hopefully all of you got a copy in the mail a few weeks ago. Kind of going over what happened in 2018, and just wanted to follow up tonight on some of those things. Last year we had some new grants that came in. Our tobacco cessation grant called the CCI Community Cessation Initiative launched, and through that we train people in-house to do tobacco cessation, help people quit. Also partnered with Licking Memorial staff, and then worked with other agencies that were interested in getting staff trained to be able to do that for their clients, as opposed to having to make referrals and doing that kind of thing. So that's been real successful in the first year. We did some human trafficking events, some education awareness events last year that were real popular, so I think we're going to be doing a similar kind of spin-off of that this summer. Yeah, as you know, our building out there on Price Road is an old building. And we're currently, since 2015 now, we're the sole owners of that 20-acre property. And this last year, we replaced 60 of the remaining windows that were from 1931. So they were about 88-year-old windows. I'm sure covered in multiple layers of lead paint. A lot of them didn't operate anymore, things like that. So we got that project finished. We also built a new storage building to get our equipment out of the main building and out into a garage, so you don't have gas-powered mowers and things sitting inside of your main office building. And we're actually having a dedication for a historical marker out at our site on April 15th at 2 o'clock. We got a Ohio historical marker that's going out by the road talking about the history of the TB sand and the property out there. So you're welcome to come to that event. The other thing for reducing tobacco use, we started talking about, just came up in the governor's latest initiatives, and that's Tobacco 21. That's a nationwide initiative trying to raise the age to buy tobacco products and vaping products to 21. Some states have adopted that statewide. A lot of communities in Ohio have adopted that. Columbus has, Cleveland, a number of the suburbs around Columbus. I think the last I heard there were 19 or 20 cities within the state that have adopted their own local Tobacco 21 ordinance. So with that, they essentially license or register the tobacco retailers, and then have this local ordinance that says, you can't sell tobacco products to anyone under 21. And because the vast majority of smokers start smoking before they're 21, and actually before they leave high school, and then become lifelong smokers, the idea is, if you can slow that down and keep people from starting when they're in high school, odds are that a lot of those people never will start. So like I said, that did show up in the governor's initiative to work on that statewide, but we're also beginning to talk with some of the cities about maybe looking at that as a local ordinance, much like we did with the local smoking ban ordinance before then it eventually passed as a statewide initiative. Our Project Dawn, our naloxone distribution kit for opioid overdose kits. Last year we gave out 363 of those in Licking County. I'd say the majority of those were in the Newark area. And we had funding from United Way and Mental Health and Recovery of Licking and Knox County to help make that possible. And we're continuing to do that in this year. One of the big things that got a lot of interest was our life expectancy map that we came out with last year that showed the health disparities, the differences in life expectancy based on where you're born and where you live. Nearly 15 years of difference in life expectancy within people living in, within maybe 3 or 4 miles of each other. So one of our goals this year is trying to look at ways to address that disparity, to try to bring those people that are experiencing that health inequity, to bring that population up, and not just in Licking County. I think that's really been one of the big public health pushes over recent years, is to try to deal with that health equity issue. It's nice to say we want to treat everybody the same, everybody gets exactly the same thing, but the reality is not everybody needs the same thing, and trying to figure out how can you meet those needs of those at-risk populations to kind of bring them up to the same playing level that the rest of the community enjoys. So we'll be working on that. And also in this year we're going to be doing a PACE EH, which is the Protocol for Assessing Community Excellence in Environmental Health survey. And essentially what that does is we'll go out and do focus groups with different communities and ask them what they think are the environmental health issues in their neighborhoods and in their communities. So sometimes we look at things like, air quality, lead paint poisonings, different stats that we can pull up, and we say, well, here's the environmental issues that we see. But when you talk to people who live in a neighborhood, they may say, well, the environmental issues, there's no sidewalks here, or the street lights don't work, or there's odors coming from someplace that maybe isn't showing up on the EPA list of toxic registry or something. So to try to find out what people really think would make their communities a healthier place to live in, because we know that there are those determinants of health, those things besides health care, have a big impact on our health. So whether it's education, the environment you live in, being able to send your kids safely outside to play, all those kinds of things have big health impacts. And so just trying to get that local perspective and work with them. So we look forward to that. One last thing I wanted to point out was our grants. Last year we had 25 major grant-funded programs. 46% of our total funding came from grants. In the last survey I saw from health departments in Ohio, it was ranging between 25 to 35% was the kind of normal picture of a health department. So I have to really congratulate our grant writing staff on doing a good job in developing good proposals, and our staff that run the programs in doing quality work so that we're able to continue getting grants renewed when they come up. We're really able to provide a lot more services to our community than what we would be able to afford just based on the local funding that we do have. But without that local funding, we also couldn't afford to write for grants and things. So it's really, even though grants often don't require a local match, we in fact, if you can't pay the grant writer or somebody to do the work, you're not going to be able to do that to start with. So it's really, really appreciative of all the support from our local subdivisions and providing the finances to help us, run the basics that we really need to be able to do those exceptional programs and bring in those grants to Licking County. So, be happy to take any questions.
Joe, usually when you put out a report, we see kind of numbers compared from year to year, and I don't see that in this flyer. So if you could, what are some of the positive trends that you've seen? And I know you follow numbers, and I know you track trends, and I know it's difficult to go year to year because they fluctuate so much. But what are some of the positive trends you're seeing in Newark from year to year and maybe over a longer period of time?
Well, I think we're seeing, we've been seeing some improvements in the nuisance, the trash kind of complaints, which, obviously we do a lot of that, but also property maintenance. So that collaboration, it's still a challenge, but I think between the land bank and both of our programs and things like that, we're starting to see some improvements there, which kind of lifts everybody up when we get those eyesores in the community taken care of. Last year, unfortunately, we did see a few more overdose deaths than we saw the previous year in the county. So that we didn't want to see. The fentanyl is really driving a lot of that. It's kind of the toxicity of that. It's been a challenge because we started out trying to fight heroin and OxyContin, and now you kind of crank it up to 11 by throwing fentanyl in the mix, so it's much more dangerous. But I think that realistically the upside is if we weren't doing all the things we were doing, it would probably be a lot worse than what we're currently seeing. So, and I definitely want to thank all the first responders, the fire department, the police department, and things, because it's easy to get burnt out on responding to the same things over and over again and not seeing the progress that you would like to see. But the programs like the mental health recovery currently have is like the kind of builds on what the police department here in Newark has with the NARI program, where people can walk in and then get a referral into treatment. I know mental health recovery just got a grant that does the same thing, and takes care of transportation, essentially walks them through a process from intake to out the door and into a residential treatment program, in one continuous stream to get them in, the same day kind of a thing and into treatment. And that has been an area that we always heard a lot of times was the problem, that we can get you in 3 days we'll be able to have somebody come talk to you, and by then the person who was ready to quit at that moment has relapsed and you missed your window. So I think that's really been a big improvement, is to be able to really take advantage of that opportunity when people are ready, that you have the resources ready to serve them.
I was going to ask you about negative trends too, but I think you already covered that. One thing I didn't see in there, maybe I missed it, is I know radon has been a huge issue in Newark and in Lincoln County in the past, and I didn't see anything on that. Are we still having the concerns with the radon, or do we think we have most of that abated, or where are we?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, close to 3 out of 4 homes in Newark proper have radon levels higher than the EPA action level, which is 4 picocuries per liter. But in a lot of times it's much, much higher than that action level. So, we've been making a lot of headway with people getting testing done, getting in radon reduction systems to get that air out from underneath the slab of the basement and pump it outside rather than letting it seep into the homes. So I think we're building on that. We have more and more homes that are getting those systems in. But if somebody's home has never been tested, which is still the majority of houses in the city, then there's probably a 3 out of 4 chance that they should be doing something about their radon levels. So we're still trying to get that message out there that if you haven't tested it, it does need to be tested.
And you guys will do that. You guys will do that testing for free.
Yeah, we still run the program. The state now does it through their website, so you can go to our website and the link goes to the state where you can request a free kit. This past year they added an income requirement, so depending on your income it can be free or a reduced rate one. And they also want you to be the homeowner, so they're not giving them to renters who can't fix the problem anyway. But yeah, essentially, if you just do that form and fill it out right, then you should be able to get a free one for most people.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chair. Thank you for the report. Appreciate it. One of the things that stuck out to me was the Tobacco 21 legislation. I know we've talked about it a little bit. Just wanted to say I'd be happy to bring that to council if you want to work. Let's work together to get that done.
Okay. Yeah, I know our tobacco prevention, health educators are looking for people that are willing to, because sometimes it's where, the hardest question is where do you start? So yeah, just getting someone that's looking to talk about it. We have a meeting coming up, I think within the next week, of a group, kind of a task force group that's working on that. so I can let them know.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, so, thanks.
So are they working on state legislation? Is that something forthcoming in the near future or distant future? Do you know?
I know that the governor has it as a priority, but the legislature is the one who passes the law. So I don't know if he's got sponsors lined up within the legislature to actually take something and move forward with it, or if it's just one of his overarching goals. Just like he has increasing newborn home visiting and home visiting programs to try to reduce the infant mortality rate and try to get kids ready for school is one of his priorities. And that ultimately, though, you have to have money to do that, so the legislature has to put that in the budget. So over the next few months, as we get ready for the new biennial one to take effect in July, we'll see what all actually gets funded in that, and that'll probably set where the priorities lie for a while.
Any other questions from committee? Blake?
Mr. Chairman, Joe, thank you for all the work that you guys do out at the health department. I got two questions. One's related to birth and one's related to death. When I look at the numbers that you provide in the report with number of births of mothers under 18 is 25, and mothers 18 to 20 is 143. And then there was 212 newborn home visits and 446 at-risk pregnancy consultations. Do you keep a statistic on the infant mortality rate for us? Do you keep that?
Yeah, we actually have a child fidelity review board that I'm chair of, and the coroner provides us a lot of that information along with children's services and law enforcement, and every entity that might have touched that family. And we go through and look at every one of those deaths, anyone up until they turn 18. And then as a subset of that, we look at the infant mortality, which is children that die before their first birthday.
Do you know what that rate is now for us?
It dropped, I want to say this year, off the top of my head, it's around 7, maybe 6 point something. A little bit, this last year, I think just a little better than the state average. The issue we have with the stats in Licking County sometimes is, because we don't have large numbers, which is great, but because of the population, it can go up and down quite a bit. If you have like 3 more preemies or whatever that don't make it, then it makes the numbers look funny. So usually we look at it at a 3-year average, and how are we doing on a 3-year average. So we're getting more in line with the state, but the state and Licking County are still well above the national, which is closer to 5, I think.
Are those numbers in a different report that you might be able to send?
Yeah, we've got that information on there, and we can provide that. And I think that we usually put that stuff on our website as well, but I can send it out.
Okay, thank you. And then the other part of my question was going to be the 24 suicides that we had in the county. Do you were those younger people or typically older folks, or I'm just curious about the age range of what those folks would have been.
I know I only reviewed the ones that are under 18, and off the top of my head, I want to say there were 2 or 3 last year that were under 18. Suicides tend to peak, essentially men in their 50s, and in that kind of an age range seem to be where you start seeing more of it being a problem. And then actually even older people who, their spouse dies or something happens, and so I know that's been a problem. But Mental Health America of Licking County does some programming on suicide prevention, and they kind of taken the lead on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from committee members? Questions from the audience?
Well, I have to say you do. It's Rochelle Volin-Smith at 237 Violet Court. I know you do a lot of really great stuff. I had a question about the plume, environmental plume around Union area. I know that was a really big thing like last year and the year before, and I haven't heard about any progress on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Rochelle, if you want to let him speak so he can speak into the microphone.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I think that's a groundwater contamination issue from industrial. We have a few of those around. So usually, and that's all through the EPA, typically Ohio EPA, sometimes US EPA. So most of the time, we only get contacted if EPA wants us to help out with, something on letting homeowners know or something like that. So, and more often than not, those are not like things you can fix overnight. It takes quite a while to actually do that. And so a lot of times it's sampling, doing, figuring out all the information they need before they can determine what might work to try to address that. So you probably have to check. Probably have to check with Ohio EPA staff to find out.
Mr. Moorhead, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably a better question to go through the engineer's office
No,
at a different time. But
yeah, we don't have a. It's not a project we've been monitoring. It's as Joe said, it's an EPA project. So
okay.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure which train it was. I thought it crossed.
Mr. Frazier.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for coming today. I read an article.
Address, please.
Mark David Frazier the First, 20 West North Street, Newark, Ohio 43055. I read an article today about measles cases and how we have more measles cases up to this point than we had for all of last year. Are we having any measles cases reported in Lincoln County? And is there anything that we need to do to protect ourselves besides getting vaccinated like you should?
For the measles outbreak, we had a huge one in Ohio a few years ago that came from Amish population that had gone on a mission trip and came back. And that impacted a little bit of us, but mostly the areas just north of us in Ohio. Currently, with the current measles outbreaks that are showing up all over the country, we have so far been able to avoid getting hit with that one. Our outbreak that we're currently dealing with is hepatitis A, which is a fecal oral, more like a foodborne illness kind of a disease, but it does affect the liver, so it's hepatitis. And we've been seeing that maybe on the news in Columbus, where somebody who works in a restaurant gets diagnosed, and then they end up saying, if you ate at this restaurant because you can have it can take months for it to show up in people before you really know that you've got it. So that's our one outbreak right now is hepatitis A, and we've been visiting the homeless shelters, different places, trying to get those populations that are highest risk for contracting that. But really, anybody, if they haven't had hepatitis A vaccine, probably should get one, just because you don't want to be that person who ate at a restaurant and then found out 2 weeks later that somebody was sick there. You don't know if they touched your food or not, but if you'd had a vaccine, you wouldn't have to stress out about that.
How long are those vaccines good for?
Those, I think, theoretically for a long time. Most of the kids that were born after '96 got them when they were infants, so they should have some good coverage. But it didn't really become common for adults until after that. So most of us that are a little bit more experienced in life probably have never been vaccinated for that one. And it's the ones we have, we can give out are for hepatitis A. You can also go to the doctor, and they make one that's a hepatitis A and B combination. B is the bloodborne one, that hepatitis A. It used to be if you had hepatitis A, you ate shellfish from the East Coast that were in contaminated waters in the Chesapeake Bay, or something like that. That was what we always jumped to, the conclusion. Kind of like we used to think Lyme disease, you had to go to the East Coast to get Lyme disease, and now it's like, no, you could have got it in your backyard. And unfortunately, hepatitis A is circulating right here in the Midwest pretty heavily right now. So we had more cases of that within the first 2 months of this year than we saw in all of last year.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the audience?
Thank you for this. Stephen Smith, 237 Violet Court, Newark, Ohio. Thank you, Joe, for everything Health Department does. I was wondering if you would speak about the progress and progression of diseases like hepatitis C and HIV.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I was asking if he would speak about the progression and progress on rates of hepatitis C and HIV in Lincoln County.
Okay.
Well, I'm pleased to report that the hepatitis C rates actually dropped last year, the number of new cases. the first time that I can really recall in quite a while. So that was good. I'm not sure what we can attribute that to. Unfortunately, there's still no vaccine for hepatitis C, so that's really what we're waiting on to try to make a big impact there. HIV, again, there's still not really a vaccine for it. The treatment has improved. We usually don't see very many new cases. I think 4 to 6, maybe a year would be normal. I think last year we had either 6 or 8 cases diagnosed for people that live in Lincoln County. So still a very low number. We've added hepatitis testing and HIV testing to more of our STD clinic clients to try to get a better picture to make sure there's not stuff being undiagnosed. And I think with HIV, the number we're seeing increase the number of people who live in the county who have been diagnosed with it. But that, in ways, that's a good thing because people aren't dying from it. So that you would expect that people are continuing to live with it. So our numbers of people in the county who have been diagnosed have increased a little bit over time. But we're really not seeing the new cases or people dying like we used to see more commonly. And really in Lincoln County, the numbers have always been pretty low on new cases identified.
All right. Well, Joe, thank you very
Look, I'm sorry. Just
very briefly. We have 15 minutes till council, and then we've got a full agenda and another committee after this.
Well, this question won't take that much time. Do you data share with Equitas Health? Do you the patients that go to Equitas Health? Do you get that information too? Is that included in your?
Well, normally any medical results that are a reportable disease, they have the labs or whoever does it put it into a system, and then we get that. HIV is a little different. It goes to the state, and then Columbus Public Health gets it, and they do the follow-up on it. So we can still pull the numbers, but they treat that one a little bit differently than it would be if it was chlamydia or something that showed up. So we don't really do the local follow-up is the only difference.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Again, thank you very much for coming out. Appreciate all that you do for us. Thanks for the report. All right, next on the agenda. Let's see.
1926.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Thank you. Discuss resolution number 19-26, authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to participate in the ODOT winter contract 018-20 for road salt, declaring an emergency. Mr. Moorhead.
Yes, thank you. This would allow the city to participate in the ODOT bid for road salt for the upcoming year. And they moved it up a month as opposed to last year, so we need to have the legislation into ODOT by April 19th, so that's the reason for the emergency. And with this legislation, would be purchasing up to 2,500 tons of road salt.
This is something that we do annually.
We have done this annually, correct.
Any questions from the committee?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Bub, seconded by Cost. Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing this on to council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0. Thank you, sir. Up next, discuss resolution number 19-27, authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service of the City of Newark, Ohio to negotiate and enter into contract subject to the appropriation of funds for professional engineering services in connection with the design and construction of ultraviolet disinfection system upgrade project pursuant to Article 10-10.02D of the Charter of City of Newark. This contract for professional services does not require competitive bidding.
Yeah, this is for design of a upgrade to our UV disinfection system. We were one of the first people in the state and the country actually put in UV disinfection at our wastewater plant. And now it's been over 20 years ago, hard to believe, but there's new systems out that we think that if we design a new system that's designed with LED lights, we can save enough electricity to pay for most of the upgrades. We got a new system and we use less electricity. So we want to take a look at designing this system. Once we get the design done, then we'll come back for construction and those kind of things if it does pan out. So this is just for design of that system and doing some cost estimates. So.
All right.
I'll offer a motion.
Motion by Bub.
Second.
Seconded by Lang. Any questions from the committee members? Questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing the assigned to council signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Roger. Up next, Resolution 19-28, authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service of the City of Newark, Ohio, to advertise for bids and enter into a contract subject to the appropriation of funds for equipment installation for SCADA system upgrade at water treatment plant. Mr. Lewis.
The SCADA system is a data acquisition system. That's how we remotely monitor or automate our plant. The plant was built in the mid-90s. This is the first upgrade to that. Obviously, technology and electronics and those kind of things have changed. This is an upgrade to that system so we can better control it online and that kind of stuff. And also upgrade some of the firmware that we have, the actual computer systems that run the system need upgraded as well. The money for this project has already been approved through a bond issue, a revenue bond that we have for this project. So we have funding in place for this. It's going to be about a $1.5 million project. So that's what it's for. So this is actually for the correct. The design's already done. So.
Any questions from the committee members?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Bub. Seconded by Cost. Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing this on to council signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That'll go 5-0. Thank you, Roger. Up next, resolution number 19-30, authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to accept bids and sell certain surplus personal property now owned by the City of Newark, Ohio, and declaring that such property is no longer needed for any municipal purpose and declaring an emergency. Mr. Rhodes, you have the call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On June 8th, we're going to have the first of two auctions at the service complex where we sell automobiles and leftover items that are no longer needed by the city. The reason it's an emergency is because of the timing and the advertisements. We have to put it in the paper.
Fair enough. Any questions from the committee? Motion by Cost, seconded by Bub. Questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing this on to council signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you.
That will conclude the service committee meeting. And safety committee will be conducted next at the discretion of the chair if we believe we have enough time.
I will call the service committee, or I'm sorry, I'll call the safety committee meeting to order. President are myself, Mr. Abulis, Mr. Fennell, Mr. Frazier, Mr. Rath, and Mr. Blake. Tonight we're discussing or considering ordinance number 19-08, an ordinance amending chapter 618 of the codified ordinances of the City of Newark, Ohio, regarding the causing serious physical harm to a companion animal. Honorable Law Director, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a piece of legislation that's before you in the request of my office and my prosecutors to give us one more opportunity to address animal abuse in the City of Newark. As you know, home rule provisions of the Ohio Constitution give us the right to have our own set of ordinances. Home rule is not what it used to be, and it's a fairly complicated area of the law. What it does not allow us to do generally is to create a felony criminal offense if that conduct is not considered a felony in the Ohio Revised Code. Recently, however, the Ohio General Assembly enacted legislation to make the causing of serious physical harm to companion animals a felony of the 5th degree. And we would like to modify Newark's codified ordinances to reflect that, which we are allowed to do under home rule since the General Assembly created that offense and made it a felony level offense. We could file these charges under state code, but in consultation with the animal control officer, with the county prosecutor, and my staff, we would like to have that as a local ordinance, not only because of the example it sets, the message it sets about how this council, how this city, how my office feels about animal abuse, but also because the
for statistical purposes and for accounting purposes, it's of some value to our department as well, because the distribution of fines is different if it's charged under a local ordinance and under state ordinances. And that money can come back to us and our animal control department to, again, further more efforts toward animal control. In a nutshell, this basically defines serious physical harm as it's set forth here in the ordinance, and says if you cause serious physical harm or death to a companion animal, that is a felony of the 5th degree. Currently in Newark, it's a 1st degree misdemeanor. Previously, to the enactment of the most recent legislation by the General Assembly, it was a 1st degree misdemeanor. We actually had one case in my office, it was just last week dismissed, because it's going to be refiled now under the new law as a felony. So we want that to be present here in our code as well, and we'd ask you to consider that modification.
Make a motion.
Second.
First by Rath, second by Frazier. Are there any questions from the committee? Mr. Rath.
Briefly, can you define a companion animal?
An animal that you keep in your home as a pet.
Could be a
It's actually defined right there in the ordinance in front of you, but it's one that's kept in your home as a pet. Yep.
Ms. Frazier.
And with Section 7 of defining all of this, previously did we just use the other sections for the prosecution of these cases, and this is all needed to be updated with the Ohio Revised Code?
In order to create the felon, in order to insert the definitions for serious physical harm, the prohibition on serious physical harm, and the penalty as a felony. That's all what's in on all caps, and that's the only change that's being made. The other sections that we've been using all along as misdemeanors remain unchanged.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? Ms.
D. Hall, 250 Water Street. I just wanted to say thank you to the law director. Thank you for doing
You're
this.
welcome.
All right.
This is great.
Any other questions from the audience? Questions from the committee? All right. All in favor of those sending this on the full council for a vote?
Aye.
Aye. Same. That passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that adjourns our safety council meeting. We will start in council in 5 minutes.